Ha! Fooled you.
There we are. There we are.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good riddance.
Hey, Scott.
How
Hey,
is
Steph.
everyone?
Hey, Pawan. Yes. Good to see you all.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello. It has been an interesting morning.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
I went to hit a button in order to do something on here, and what it did was it opened a copy of it in another window, so suddenly I had 2 StreamYards going.
Oh, that's useless. It's just technical. It's all good.
Yeah. Goodness knows none of us are any good with technical things.
Mm-mm.
So,
That happens.
I am Scott Stahl. I have been with Flutter community since, long enough that I don't want to show my age. September 2017 is when I got started with Flutter.
Sure.
I am an organizer for GDG Cleveland, do a bunch of community stuff. I'm the owner of the Flutter community Slack, which we will get banners up so that you can find all the great Flutter community stuff. And I guess I've hogged this long enough. Randall, who are you again?
I believe I'm Randall Schwartz. I've been in the industry for 45 years now, something like that. And most recently, my claim to fame is that I am a Flutter/Dart Google developer expert, which means that I am authorized to go to meetings that tell me what's coming up in Flutter, which is good, which I'm not allowed to talk about because I'm under an NDA. But also, I spend probably 1 to 2 hours a day patrolling everything that's in flutter.dev/community, all the different channels that are available there, all the different, that's Reddit and Facebook and all sorts of other
He doesn't really
things.
do all these things. Make sure you tell your boss you're not really doing all these things. You're working on his stuff.
Well, I'm working on his
He's
stuff
probably
too.
watching, and I'm going to lunch with him on Friday.
I'm working on his stuff too, but I also get an incredible enjoyment from answering people's questions. But I also learn a lot by if it's anything I don't know already, I get to Google it, and I'm really good at Google, and it tells me what I need to know to be able to answer the question. So yes.
Very cool.
That's
Speaking
what I
of
do.
a question, a lot of times we get questions about ladies in the Flutter community, and one of the great things in the Flutter community, of course, it's here somewhere. Where is it? I don't know.
Flutteristas?
Ah,
You must have Flutteristas.
There
we go.
And if only we had someone from the Flutteristas here. Steph?
You can talk now. Steph?
Yeah.
If only. If only. I'm Steph, and I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, not at all.
I hear you fine.
When she loosens up, she's a lot of fun at parties.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me start over. I'm Steph. I am, by day, I am a SQL developer by day, and then in the evenings, I do Flutter, and I co-manage the Flutteristas, which is an organization or a community for women and non-binary with a passion for Flutter.
Cool. Very cool.
And there was also the Flutterista
and also I'm going to do a hopeless plug here. I'm also a tech editor at raywenderlich.com, and I have tech edited our Flutter Apprentice book, and I have also done articles, and I Final Pass edit too.
Very cool.
Cool.
Very cool. I heard the book has a 2.5 update coming very soon. Steph, is that true?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We have a 2.5 one, actually. We are pencils down today, and there's magic happening behind the scenes. So we'll see when it comes. I don't know the exact date yet.
Yeah,
Just might be
cool.
the very first Flutter book updated for 2.5. So there you go. Then we've got this other guy over here. I don't know. I don't know if anybody in Flutter's ever heard of him. PK, what's going on?
Hey everyone. All good, all good.
The PK. Not just
First
a
of all,
PK.
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's great to see you guys again after a long time, I guess. It's been a long time. Really good time. And Scott, how can you forget me, man? Like we had some great time together.
We had, you know what? PK and I took a road trip across Pennsylvania together. So
a very long road trip, I would say. It's been
anytime you go through Pennsylvania, it's always a very long trip. Trust me.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun with Scott especially, and yeah, man, thanks again for that wonderful trip. I will keep thanking you until we meet again.
Not a problem.
Did you go to the biggest ball of twine in the world?
No. We had just left Flutter Interact. In fact, it was kind of funny. He was going to take a bus the night before, and I will look up this talk in just a little bit here while he's talking.
Okay.
But we were at, what was it?
We were at Flutter Interact.
Is it Dev 2? In New York? And we were speaking basically at Flutter, at a Flutter meetup in New York.
Yeah.
And we had, I looked around, and we all looked around and said, you know what? We've got so many people here in Flutter from Europe and India and from all over the place that we've got to do a panel in front of the whole room, you know, so that everybody can do an open Q&A, because there were like 15 of us, something like that. And so I go over to PK and I'm like, hey man, you got to do this. And he's like, no, I gotta get on a bus, you know, to go to Rochester from New York City. It's so quite a ways. So, and I'm like, no, that's okay. I'm driving to Cleveland the next day anyway. I'll just drop you off on the way.
Nice.
So yeah, we ended up doing that panel. I'll find a link to it here on YouTube. It's a great panel. What is it? It's you, PK, me, Rhodey Davis. Oh, I'm gonna forget people. I swear I'm gonna. There was Rhodey Davis.
I think everyone was there.
Frederick.
Everyone.
Oh, it was crazy. There was Frederick. There was Simon. There was Norbert. There was Nash. I can't even begin to remember everybody who was. Martin Ryback was there. David from VGV was there. I mean, it was insane. The number of people there was. I don't know. No, Martin Jarrett didn't come up for that, did he? Because he had given the presentation earlier. Anyway, I'm babbling.
So PK, you're a GDE too, right?
Yeah. So, if people don't know me, so I'm Pawan. I'm from India, and I'm the guy behind MTech Viral, now CODEPUR. It was previously MTech Viral, but had to change the name. So yeah, that's what most of the people know me for Flutter content or the things around Flutter. And I started Flutter, I guess, way back in end of 2016. That was like a long time ago.
Right.
And
that's
since
back
then,
in the Sky days almost, right?
Sky days almost.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. And like being a Google developer expert for Flutter for almost now 3 years. And yeah, it's been fun seeing all people in the Flutter community, meeting them personally as well, and waiting for meet all of you guys in person very soon, again after a long time, I would say.
And you've released some amazing programs, right? You've released like training series, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, recently, you know, like when we were about to have Flutter Engage, right? This year, there were some plans about doing 30 days of Flutter as well, right?
Yeah, we
So
did 30 days. Yes, I remember that.
so so I had like a lot of content in like English and Hindi as well previously, but this time I thought like a lot of people from India, they are very much interested in Flutter, and they would want something in native language as well. So that's when I started doing this 30 days of Flutter in native language for the first time, where it was a complete series.
Wow.
I thought that I will give my 30 days to make that, so that it feels natural and people can also, code along with me, and they can do something, useful, or they can create something at least. And pretty much happy to say that that was, I guess, one of uh, like I published all those videos individually as well, and then I like kind of merged them together and published it as a single video in May.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, it's been like 4 or 5 months, I guess, and it's, I guess, one of the most successful video of my channel now.
Yeah.
So that means that it's like the native people liked it, and a lot of people messaged me saying that we got our first internship by watching that video, or first job by watching that video, or there are a lot of learning. So yeah, that's a good feeling. That's why we create content. And I guess all of us in the Flutter community are somewhere content creators. So that's the, I guess, the most important outcome we would want, that people get help out of it, and they can do something good with that.
What do you find the most challenging about creating Flutter videos?
I think most challenging part is to just start that particular process, right? So you have to
Yeah.
first sit for some time, right, to start it. And this initial start is always challenging for me, because I'm like busy in doing so many things, and once I am like sitting on for the content, then it's easy after that. But along with that, I think challenging comes when you have to kind of edit a lot of things here and there, because these days people generally don't want to waste the viewers time, like because of, let's say, if there is a, like, if the Gradle is building and it is taking some time, you can't do that like anything, right? You have to just wait. But you
Right.
would not want your viewers to wait for that much time, so you have to cut that part.
Right.
And yeah, these kind of things, like I'm not that much interested in editing and all that stuff, but yeah, these days people definitely require that. And second thing which I mostly face challenge with is creating thumbnails, because I think it plays a very important role when it comes to, like, even if you can you can make the best content in the market, but then also you would want people to just try it out at least once, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
mean, that's how YouTube algorithm works for you. So you have to kind of do everything best, so that people can at least click on it and watch it for some minutes, and then decide whether they want it to watch it entirely or not. So I guess that's most of the challenges with the content creation. And yes, of course, the idea is like something which we always have to think about, right? What video to make, or what content to bring, like in terms of
Right.
articles as well. And at the same time, I don't want to clash with like what other peoples are doing, because I have like a lot of good friends who are also doing this YouTube thing on Flutter community. And when something new comes, and we all are jumping to create some content out of it, then I see what others are creating, and what unique, or what something which I have good understanding with, I can create that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's always a challenge, because I mean, initially you can create a course, but then you have to find out what's missing, right? What people don't know about yet.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I also, being a fellow GDE, I have to publish or perish, right? So I have to actually have stuff out there all the time. And part of the problem is that so many people have done so many great things that it's like I don't want to duplicate what they did. I think they
Exactly.
already said it well, so I don't need to do that again. And I'm lucky to have hit a few high points with things like my Future Builder, Stream Builder talk, and my how Flutter relates to Dart null safety talks. And those have been great and frequently referenced, which is great. You know,
The
because
an
nobody
interesting
else went
point,
there.
though,
Yeah.
an interesting point on that
Yes, Scott.
is don't worry about repeating other people's content, because
Yeah.
you have a different take on it. You have a different way of presenting it. How many times have we been trying to learn something and only watched one tutorial?
Well,
I haven't.
I'm
Yeah.
watching
I-
10.
I-
I'm watching 10 tutorials on Navigator
Yeah.
2 now. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, we are taking
Each
questions.
person
By the
covers
way,
things a little bit differently.
we are taking
Yeah.
questions. If you prefix it with Q colon, it's going to stand out better. Just letting you know.
Yeah. Now,
But
one
we
other
will take
thing, real
questions.
quick. If you go to YouTube and you search for that,
Okay.
your top result is going to be the panel with PK and myself, and I forgot 3 people. Okay. I forgot Mariano,
Oh,
Jay,
yeah.
Jay
and
was
Thomas
also there,
Burkhardt.
Wow.
So
Quiver.
yes, there was quite the crew there. And that one is something you don't want to miss. Especially because, if nothing else, you get an idea of how tall Nash and Norbert really are. Because they look like they're little guys. They're not little guys. They're not little guys at all. And
Scott,
to give
can
you
you
an
pull up that
idea,
question?
judging to give you an idea, judging it, Thomas Burkhardt is 6'1".
Wow.
So you can judge
think-
everybody by that.
Wow.
I think
I'm
I was the
I'm
little guy
tiny
there.
compared to that. Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it was you, Mariano, and Jay. We need to line all you guys up and see.
Yep. So we have a question in the chat room. Quiver. What do we know about Quiver?
I think I can take it.
Go for
So yeah, I
Sure.
mean, it's more like, I guess, I have used Quiver initially when, Dart 2 was not that kind of, good enough, at least from some perspective, like some features were missing at that time. So what I would say is Quiver is equivalent to Link if you have used Link in C#, right? So it gives you a lot of functionalities. Like so what Quiver is doing is basically, it's kind of maybe you can say like what today we do with extension methods. That's something Quiver used to provide, right? Where you can just have a lot of utilities for strings, a lot of utilities for lists, right? Let's say you want to do something like, grouping some items from a list or ordering them, right, in nested lists. So those kind of things, I guess Quiver does pretty well. I am not using it anymore because I am mostly relying on, extension methods a lot, on which I have also created like the functions mostly which I use, right? So that's what I know about Quiver. It's really a good package, and it's something which definitely helps you with almost every project, because there is a lot of utilities which you get, right?
Cool.
Very cool. Let's see here. So, Steph,
Yeah.
as far as the Flutteristas go,
Yes.
if someone wanted to get involved, how would they do that? I'm
So
trying to
if you-
spread the love here.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just sitting here going, okay, I could just like go back to bed or go back to my day job. It's totally fine. If you bring up the Flutteristas URL again, so basically go to flutteristas.org, and there is a section that explains how to join and takes you to a form. You fill out the form, you have to answer some questions. It's for women and non-binary, as I mentioned earlier, who have a passion for Flutter, no matter what your level of experience. If you just learned about it, heard about it from a friend, and you want to learn, great. If you are an expert, great. The big thing is we are women and non-binary. It's a safe place for people who have been, what's the right word? Held back in some areas, and it's awesome. We've just added several other people. We did a conference earlier this year, and there is a video here in the Flutter community videos for our, I think it was 12-hour conference. The Flutterists did an amazing job, and so we are always looking for people to join. So yeah, just go to flutteristas.org. There's a link to a form, and there are various questions. We do background check and look at make sure people are who they say they are and that they meet the criteria for being a member of the Flutteristas. We're not trying to cut out people who identify as male. We will have presentations and meetings and things like that that include everyone across the globe, but to keep it as a safe place, we restrict membership to being people who identify as female and non-binary.
And that's an interesting thing. You don't want to be that guy who obviously is trying to cruise to find a girlfriend because they can't find one any other way.
Yeah, we're not for that.
Because you can tell because the first thing they do is whine and complain why they, as a straight guy, can't join a group for women. Because the group's for women, it's not that tough. Okay. No, you don't get to join every single group under the sun and then cry discrimination if you can't. So it's a group for women and non-binary. If you're a straight guy, no, it's not a place you can go to try and find a girlfriend. So try again.
Thank you
anyway.
for that.
Let me see here. Is there any way I can get the whole code of any widget tree in the form of a string?
I can't answer that one. I'm going on mute.
You know, the best I can think of really is to go into the Flutter inspector and just walk your way down, or actually in the Flutter inspector, it'd be easier to walk your way up. But PK, you got anything else on that one?
I mean, I have never tried it. I'm sure it should be achievable though, right? But it's something which, like you mentioned, if you'll go to Flutter inspector, you can do a lot of things, right? I mean, you can like scan the entire tree, but at the same time, because you can do that with Flutter inspector, so let's assume that that thing is feasible, right? I mean, something needs to be like, like experiment on this particular thing. Not sure what should be the best way of doing it, but yeah, I mean this is something interesting. I'll definitely take a look what we can do in this particular case. I think
something that I'm wondering is, based on the follow-up comment, basically I want to get code in Go and display that in my app. So that helps with that. But yeah, I've only ever seen it where you go and you're looking through Flutter Inspector and, like Scott, start at the bottom, work your way up. But if you've got a lot of different files, I don't think you can get it into just a single, but they want to get code and Go and then display it in their app. Wouldn't that just be using an API? I could be wrong.
That's, and trying to do it with a back-end language like Go, that's totally not my area.
I think that person wants to render based on like some API response. He wants to render some widgets. That's possible, right? I mean, you have to create that kind of structure, right? Like you can just throw widgets, throw the exact replica of how you make widgets, right? The code replica, and that can be done. I have seen some people doing it, in fact, right? So that's a possible thing.
To talk to, the person to really talk to about this is going to be Norbert, because Norbert came up with something called Detective.
Yes. So he might have
Detective does all kind of crazy stuff. He is able to take all that information and get it printed out to a web page, to his web interface. And I believe he did it all in Flutter.
Wow.
So definitely check out detective.dev. It's not going to directly do what you're looking for, but it shows you what's possible. And again, you might want to talk to Norbert Kozir, Kozir. He's the guy in the yellow shirt on the far right-hand side of that panel with all of us, standing up there being stupid in New York.
You weren't being stupid.
And what's SDLC?
That's what I'm wondering here.
Software development lifecycle. I can answer that one.
Really? Wow.
Go for
Okay. Cool. Answer.
I know of some tutorials we have on raywenderlich.com that talk about modeling and the best way to do it. And there's also, I found some stuff on Medium. I have so many different links, but I usually go back to the article, and maybe I'm passionate because it was one of my first articles I tech edited, but I know it's there and I know it's solid. So let me see if I can find the link.
Yeah. And if you have to paste a link in the chat,
I can put it in the chat, and then you guys, okay.
Yeah, you put it in the chat. I can
put it in our
Gotcha.
chat.
It'll be real easy.
Do that.
Okay.
Actually, you can put it in the YouTube chat, and that way it will be there for all posterity.
She can't. Because
I can do it as me in the YouTube chat, but we can also way we have it on the video. I
can put it on the video after it's in the YouTube chat. I have the magic power. It's easier to do that than to make a banner.
Does Flutter own the Dev TLD? No, Dev is actually owned by Google.
I also shared a link for JSON like widget package, which does that. I mean, to get some inspiration. That might not be the best package out there, but to get some inspiration, like how you can use JSON to render your widgets. So that's something which, if that's interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple of packages that are like that. There's the trying to remember the name of one of them. The functional widgets, I think, is the name of it. Pretty cool. Majid.
And we have a visitor.
Yes, we should have Majid here. Majid
Tijan.
Yep.
The organizer of Flutter Vikings.
Yes.
Which they are working on some really, really good things. Let's put it that way. Although I keep trying to, I keep thinking I should try to talk Majid into having Flutter Vikings at a nice vacation spot like the south of Spain on the water. So
I'll join us.
I know Vikings are normally supposed to be snow, but even Vikings take vacations in nice, sunny, warm places with beaches. But yes, I know he is actually talking about trying to figure out if we can do this in person. So have a really nice in-person event on the beach. So, okay. I'm trying to figure that out. Did Steph and PK, did you put the links?
Yeah, I think it was blocked by YouTube probably because, links are not generally allowed.
Yeah,
probably.
If you're not a moderator for this channel, you can't post any links.
Okay, just throw it in the private and I'll sling it over to public.
We can do that.
So I went back and I looked at the one that I was thinking of, and it was specifically on state management with provider, and it talks about that layout and how, there's some introductory stuff that's included in there. So I'm browsing right now to see if another one that's talking specifically about getting started with Flutter, but I'm still looking.
At least you're talking about provider, and I would also eventually hope you're talking about RiverPod and not gdes. Gdes is an abomination that should be completely ignored.
Don't.
We don't want to get into.
Don't.
What? We can't do that here? I'm sorry. I'll stop. I'll stop.
There's
The
one
short
more I
version
can
on that
share.
one because now people are going, what? Why?
Yeah. Sorry.
The short version is I have talked to I've talked to 30 Flutter GDEs, including these two. And you guys saw that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it was in a big channel. We've gone over, Simon Lightfoot has dug through the code. So have a few other people. And the short version is it's trying to be everything. It's not doing any of it very well.
Right.
It also breaks composability by the way it does things, but in fairness, any service locator is going to do that. Also, if I remember correctly, is it using a global context?
Yes.
And that in itself has its own ramifications, and none of them are good for performance.
Right. Context needs to be something that is drilled down from the top.
Right.
To make
Not
it work
taken
correctly.
from off on the side.
Yeah, you can't have a variable called context. That's not going to work.
Those are the things that people say, but the real test for me is I asked probably 50 people who are either GDEs or who were with Flutter since alpha.
Yeah.
Who is using gdes. One person said they were using it, but they were only using it because the company they were working for insisted on it.
Wow. Yeah.
No one else uses it. And that, regardless of whatever their reasons happen to be, I'm not going to get into that because I don't know all their reasons. It's just the really, really experienced people are not using it. And that's not to say any other package is the greatest, because they are using a lot of different things.
Right.
I happen to know that a number of them are using Block from Felix. A number of them are using Provider. A number of them are using Riverpod. A number of them insist that they won't use any state management prepackaged system at all.
Which seems crazy to
and
me,
they
but
do
okay.
everything. But the way you do that is you can create
change notifier. You can build with change notifier.
You can use change notifier with an app. Find app state of find ancestor app state of context or something like that.
Yeah,
I'd have to look it up. And there is at least one other person, and I happened to notice earlier, animations and animation builders
Animated
apparently
builder,
are really the thing under the hood that you can use for state management if you really know what's going on.
In fact,
what was that just had it? Go ahead, PK.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, if you see the new skeleton made by Flutter team, right? They are using animated builder, right?
Right.
So that's something interesting. I mean, I don't have a really good take on gets as such because I have never used it personally. And but what I see is a lot of people there are two ways of seeing it. I think one is that when you go to pub.dev and you try to search for state management, right? gets comes almost on the top, right? Which means that a lot of people are new in the Flutter community. They don't really know which package, what is the scoring mechanism, right? Behind all these packages and how they are scored and what is the best one, right? That's one thing. But apart from that, I think it's the easiness of things, right? I mean, a lot of people use gets probably because they feel it's very easy to use, right? And it gets the job done. I really don't know what kind of penalties are there when you are building your application with gets. But at the same time, I think that even though you are using any of the state management package, you should know what's happening behind the scenes, right? Because
yes,
even if you are using provider, you are using inherited widgets. For example, I have done some application using just inherited model and streams, right? And that's being fabulous for me because I know what's happening, right? And I can manipulate it in whatever way I want. So my recommendation is always to whatever package you use, just try to understand what's happening, because then only you can find the problems inside it, right? If there is any.
I
And
didn't. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead. I didn't understand RiverPod until I went through the tests for RiverPod, which are really well done, and taught me basically how a provider is basically doing nothing until it's wired up to a widget with RefWatch or whatever way you have a consumer widget, whatever. And it's really interesting how that particular connection then enables the provider. And it wasn't until I saw the relationship there, that basically a provider in RiverPod is lazy. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything until it's wired up.
Yep.
And once it's wired up, it then becomes the thing that notifies the widget that the widget should rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand that about RiverPod, it's like, well, duh. It's pretty clever and elegant. And Remy did a great job.
yeah.
And
Even if you take yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that even if you take any package for the sake of saying it, right, there's a lot of learning, especially for me, like even after doing Flutter for, like good number of months or years, you can say, I still, whenever I find a new package, whenever I explore it, there is something new, right, which I probably didn't know, or some new way of achieving a new thing, right? Similarly, like you can use multiple widgets to maybe achieve the same kind of result, right? So similar kind of experience I have seen with packages as well. And state management is something which I also feel that, very much dependent on what application you're building, right? What is that your exact use case? Because I think it plays a very important role. For example, Felix has made this package Flutter block, right? Which can be very useful in certain situation where you are trying to architect your code into that event and state kind of relationship, right? Which we see with Redux and some other similar packages or libraries in the web world, right? So it's good for people who are actually loving Redux pattern of doing things, because they are pretty much familiar, and once you are familiar with something, you will be into a very good shape when you see something like that, right? So it depends on two things from my perspective, is that what is your experience with, what problem are you facing, and if that is solving that problem, then I think it's good enough, right, to stick with that. Or if you just have a single page application, then probably you would just stick to change notifier, or like just use set state probably in that case as well.
And also on that subject of learning, there is I look for little signs. Okay, how many people are using one thing or not using it type deal. Forget stars, forget popularity. Okay, people who have been in Flutter for a week can give a star. Doesn't matter.
Definitely.
It really doesn't. Also, it has been shown, I'm not saying anybody is, but it has been shown that there is a function in the API you can use to trigger a star from outside. Simon found it in about 3 minutes. So it took him no time to run that down. Right. So
you shouldn't share
we
these
kind of
kind of
ignore
things, by the way.
stars, because that's a popularity contest. I ask myself, what are people using? And two of the big things, what did they put in this new framework example, right? In the new template example, they used Animated Builder. Okay. That is the actual Flutter team doing that. And up until now, they were recommending Provider, but now they've got Animated Builder in there. And I also happen to know at least one ex-Flutter team member. That's the way they also do their state management on their paid projects, is Animated Builder. So the only
That's
people I know from the Flutter team, when I dig into their code, they're both currently using Animated Builder and no packages.
And that's a good idea, especially if people or former Flutter team members, they're out in the wild now, and if their code's on GitHub, I learn a lot by going through other people's code. I need to do it more, but now with a day job, I have to split my time. So it's in my spare time. And now that we're done with our pencils down on our book, I will have more time to actually get back into my Flutter development. But looking at other people's code that are people who have reputation, like I can look at any one of you three plus Simon and Majid and, you know, everybody. I'm not going to go through and list. It's just everybody that Scott mentioned earlier.
Another really good one is super declarative. Okay, who is
Definitely.
Matt Carroll? Don't forget,
Yes.
he's a former Flutter team member.
Yeah.
He wasn't one of the big sexy ones that you see all the time. He was one of the ones working in the trenches on the code. So look at what he's using, because it was his job on the Flutter team to go crawl around in the basement of the code where everything really makes it work.
Exactly.
So
And
whatever he's working is probably a good idea.
I liked your suggestion about ignoring. I mean, they'll catch my eye, the stars and the likes and whatever, but it's who's using it is what's important, because like you said, there are people out there who take advantage of situations. There are far more honest people, but you look at somebody who has the reputation, people who are leaders in the community or recommended by someone. It doesn't have to necessarily be somebody in, you know, high up. It's not like we really have a hierarchy, but, you know, not everyone is Simon, you know, but
you know who's at the top of the hierarchy? Whoever buys Neeli bubble tea. That's who's at the top of the hierarchy. Okay. That gets you instantly, boom. If you ever see Neeli in person, bring her bubble tea. You'll be set. Okay. Moving on.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Now, one other thing I really want to pop up here for just a moment. There are a number of questions that we always get. Okay. So, yeah.
Always. And from Groove and Chip, often. So, yes.
Oh, yeah. So
same thing is happening with Navigator, by the way.
Yeah,
Navigator
also
too,
like that,
Navigator. And I'm going to pull this up.
And there's like a half
Let's
dozen
table
packages.
that one for a minute. I will come back to navigation in just a moment with something really awesome. Hey, he did make it. Folks, I can see what's going on backstage, and I'll wait until he waves at me that he's ready. But Majid is here.
Wow. Awesome.
There we go.
Hey,
Majid.
I couldn't leave this. I have to come, definitely. Hello, everyone.
There you go.
Very nice to see you
So-
all.
Greetings.
This one question, the other one that we get besides state management.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all,
what editor?
here's the straight story. Okay. Number one, there is no best. Does not happen. Does not exist.
It's whatever works for
Here's
you.
the balance. Okay. And everybody forgets one. They forget IntelliJ, because there's the current IntelliJ, and then there is the last version of IntelliJ with a whole bunch of stuff bolted onto it, and that's called Android Studio. And the reason it is one IntelliJ version behind is it takes time. You know, they have to get the new version of IntelliJ. They have to add all of those additional things that make it Android Studio, and then they can release, and that's fine. So basically, if you're doing Android, then you need all those extras. If you're not doing Android, you don't need them. So you can just use straight up IntelliJ. And also, I mean, I love JetBrains, but as a Flutter developer, there is no reason to pay for the Pro Edition or whatever it is they're calling it for, or they're calling it. The Community Edition is perfectly fine. Now, that said, vscode, a lot of people use that too, and I think it keeps flipping back and forth. It's like 52%, 48% vscode. And IntelliJ slant Android Studio, since they're the same. And it bounces back and forth. Half of us are using each one. So why? Here's the thing. Number one, VS Code is lighter and faster to work with.
Yeah.
Now, there's no question about that. However, on the flip side, IntelliJ has a lot of really convenient things that make your life a lot easier that you do not have to do manually, that you have to do with VS Code. Especially a lot of things that you can access through menus. Whereas in VS Code, you have to do what is that key combination? Shift something P?
Yeah,
Command
Shift
palette.
P.
Command P. And then the one thing I don't like about VS Code, yes, you can access anything through that menu, but only if you know what it's called.
Mhm.
That's part of
If
why
you don't know the name of it, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Finding things in VS Code I found really difficult when I first, but again, as I put a comment, I started with Android Studio because I started and was introduced to Flutter through London at Brewery, and that's what Angela used. And when I worked with Simon earlier this year, I was seeing, and just like you were talking about IntelliJ, and they're all just, it's whatever you're most comfortable with. I've stayed with, because when I'm doing development, I'm doing both for Android and iOS. And if I want to put it on a device, I'm still going to have Android Studio. So I go that route. But there, like Scott said, there is no best. And you'll see that
if you look at that, sorry, go ahead, Steph.
No, I would. I was just going to say, you'll see on, I've talked about the articles and things and the stuff on raywenderlich.com. You'll see both. It all depends on the author. And like in our book, we used Android Studio. We decided this is what we're going to use. And because we had full intentions of putting something, we walk people through getting your apps to the Google Play Store, to the Apple Store and things like that. And we wanted you to have to bounce around. And so it's all dependent on what you plan to do.
I have a take on this as well. I mean, there's one thing which you will see is that, there are some features which you'll find very good in VS Code. And similarly, there are some features which you'll find very good in IntelliJ, right? For example, refactoring. If you have to refactor your code, then IntelliJ might be a better option as compared to VS Code. But what I recommend generally to people when they ask me this question, I have two scenarios. One is that which laptop or machine you use, right? If it's something which is, like if you have very less RAM, or if you struggle with having multiple things open, right? Then I always recommend to use VS Code, because that's gonna be always useful for you, because VS Code is generally like lightweight, as everyone says, although not all the time. If you have a very big Flutter project and if you use a lot of extensions, then you will see that they both kind of work behind the scenes similarly, like they take similar kind of resources and everything, right? But yes, for smaller projects, generally you won't feel a difference. Second suggestion would be that what else you do apart from Flutter, right? If you just do Flutter, then probably you would be happy to just stick with IntelliJ or Android Studio, right? Maybe IntelliJ itself, right? But if you do something else along with Flutter, for example, I am like comfortable with both of them because I am kind of using some other things as well. So especially when you are developing for web, then probably VS Code is a much better option, because those shortcuts which you will learn can be useful for all of your different projects as well, which might not be the case with IntelliJ, because but if you use like mostly JetBrains software, for example, a lot of people use WebStorm, PyCharm and all those kind of things as well, then I think this ecosystem will be much better for you. So obviously it depends on your comfort level. And second thing is that what kind of machine you are using, it's actually very important to choose your IDE based on that, or code editor based on that. But yeah, I mean, I am a fan of both, because of they both have some things which gives some extra benefits on the top of the other, right? So it's definitely like consider those points and maybe then choose a decision. But which one is best? I don't think there is any best, as Scott said.
Yeah, and one
I have
other
also
thing
a take
too
here.
is
Can I can you
just
hear me,
one
by the
little
way?
thing. Yeah, I can hear
we
you just fine. Just one other quick little point before I pass it on to Majid. The one thing that VS Code had that I really wanted was live share. The ability of more than one person to work on a file at the same time. And it was like Google Docs. You could see where the other person was and you're both working on the code. IntelliJ now has that built in.
Yeah, correct.
So that's not an
it's
advantage
in IntelliJ.
anymore.
It's in IntelliJ, but not in Android Studio as of now.
Yeah.
So if that's
Not
the
yet.
choice you have to make,
It'll
then
probably be the
IntelliJ.
next one. Yeah. But
I want to add one thing.
Yeah.
If you're brand new and you're not sure which IDE and you're just starting out with Flutter and Dartpad, just to get yourself familiar with it. Because I had somebody who I was trying to convince how great Flutter is, and they didn't believe me. They didn't want to do the installation. They didn't want to do anything. And I'm like, go to Dartpad, use Flutter there, use Dart, so you can get familiar. You can see how it goes. And then you jump in. And it worked. They loved Flutter. But
well, don't you know,
it was
real
like they
coders
didn't want to
use
go
Vim.
through all the installation parts. So just that's for brand new people, or if you got a code sample or something like that. No. Do you want to develop an entire app? Absolutely not.
Dartpad does teach one bad habit. It puts all your classes in one file.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, Majid, you were going to say, sir?
Yes, I wanted to say actually, whatever you choose, just learn that things very well, because at the end of the day, these are tools that are going to help you to become productive. If it really doesn't matter what, even if you are good with Vim and you are pretty good at developing Flutter with Vim or V or Emacs, really doesn't matter. As long as you know it very well, you become productive. Whatever makes you productive, you can refactor to do your code, whatever. That's the best, I guarantee.
And as Pawan said, that the one thing that really might swing you is if you don't have the power to run IntelliJ without creating problems, then yes, go vscode. It is lighter by far. But as I said, IntelliJ has things that make my life a lot easier.
Sure.
So anyway, one quick thing. Surat, you want to back the YouTube video up about 15 minutes. You'll be fine. So let me see here.
I have two things to share if you want.
Actually, no. It does not make your code clean. You make your code clean.
Sure.
Alrighty. And so you were going to share, Majid.
Yes, the contest that we announced yesterday regarding Plus plugins, and the October is a time for contributing to open source, right? Hacktoberfest or Hacktoberfest actually is coming. So yesterday we announced a campaign for everyone who wants to contribute. They can actually come and contribute to all of our packages in Flutter community, whatever, that's perfect. But specifically, if you contribute to Plus plugins, we already tagged Hacktoberfest, Feast, and everything is ready. So then on top of what you get from DigitalOcean, T-shirt and everything, if you have already done that previous year, you know what they send you. So on top of that, you will receive Flutter SDK from me. I will send it personally to your address. Hopefully there is no restriction in your country to receive it. And the best contributor will receive a dash from me. One of these dashes here is going to fly to your home very soon if you feel to contribute to Plus plugins. Just take the opportunity if you want.
There you go.
Yeah, when people see my dash, they're like, I want one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of them actually, Steph, and these are for these type of events. I want to give these dashes away. So, and that's why they are sitting here right now, but soon they will fly to someone's house, I'm sure.
There you go.
That is one of the very nice things. There are some people on the Flutter team who do trust us to give them out. So yes, we do get sent dashes. We're not allowed to keep them.
Absolutely.
We're sent them under the understanding this is for the good of the community. We get to keep one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But okay, I want to step back for a moment to the whole Navigator and Navigator 2 thing. Pawan knows where this is going. I think Majid, you might know too.
Why?
Or
I
Steph.
can guess actually.
There's a gentleman in Flutter. He's a minor figure. His name is Chris Sells.
Sure.
It's not minor. Oh
He's just a little guy. He's the PO, which I believe stands for product owner of Flutter. And in his Google has what they call 20% time. If you don't know, basically 20% of the week you can spend working on whatever it is that you feel passionate about. As long as it's developing something, they don't care. Well, Chris had put his 20% time into something called Go Router. So let me pull this up here real quick.
I think you are muted, Scott.
You are on
Muted.
mute, Scott, I guess.
Yeah, here you go.
We lost you again, I guess.
I
Scott,
think
we
we
can't
lost
hear
you
you.
again, Scott.
We can't hear you.
He and I went through this yesterday when he was sharing something.
I'll take over. Hello.
One-
Oh, Simon.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Simon.
Long time no see.
Yeah, right.
An hour.
So, what we've been talking about? What did I miss?
I think we wanted to go through the Go router, but Scott microphone doesn't work anymore. Maybe we should go.
Well.
Okay.
Oh.
Am I
Here
okay
you go.
right now?
Here you go.
Yes. You're
Yes.
Okay, Simon,
Yes.
before you came on, people were talking about Navigator, Navigator 2. I figured we would touch on Chris's project. I
Yeah.
started saying this is his project and his 20% time. It took him several months to do. Now, before I lose my microphone again, Simon, take over.
What? What? I don't know. I actually had a brief look at this a little while ago, actually, and when I was going through this README, it's very well documented. It's got a lot of use cases, and he's just addressed everything I could think of. So, and why don't we can look through it if you want?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think that's a great idea.
Shall I share my screen? Is that it? Is that what you're trying to get at? I need Scott to do like hand gestures because his mic's not working again.
No, it doesn't work.
You can't hear you, Scott. Yes, Simon, go.
I can't
Share
find the
your
link.
screen.
Testing 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. Yeah, it does this with Google Meet and with StreamYard. It has something to do with web browser sharing because it does not do it on Zoom.
Blame it on Zoom.
Absolutely. And also there's people have asked in a couple of different ways. Someone was saying MVVM, or actually there's this question. And there is also this question.
All of the above.
And actually, I was going to say
And
neither.
NVI. Let's just throw another one out
Package-
there. Why not? I mean, look. So we've lost you again. We've lost you again.
I ran into that earlier, Scott.
Okay,
Go
you
up,
need to
if you're in Chrome, go and in the URL line, there's a mute. Unmute it from there.
All right. Just press on the mute button until it works. It's still not working. Anyway, whilst he's figuring that out, let's the show must go on. Yeah, no, regarding the I'm gonna see if I can find where is it? Oh,
How about now?
yes.
Okay. What I was saying is just package by feature. Really.
Well, yeah,
And,
but I mean,
you know,
like,
reactive architectures.
it's not really that's the sort of organization architecture, but not like the data architecture, should we say?
Right.
I was actually having a good conversation with someone earlier on today about the Gang of Four book, because it's really good. The patterns in this book, by the way. Hang on.
Okay, well, if you're getting into patterns now, the main patterns that are used in Flutter, period, just to touch on them real quick, is composition, state, and observer. They're the big three that you're going to see everywhere. You can use others, but Flutter itself just looks at, oh man, those tabs? No, those tabs are nothing. You should see my main You should see my main browser.
No, this
is
is
107.
This is the all the patterns that and how they relate to each other, all the common patterns used in object-oriented programming. And this has been around. This was first written up in 1970 something, I think it was.
And one that's easier to understand, written for human beings, and is newer.
Yeah,
is this one.
Is that
there is actually
reworks?
second version of that Scott.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So I know.
First design pattern.
This book here is written in the language of the day, right? So this is written in the 1970s language. You need to this is written for Smalltalk, I think it was, or Objective C or whatever it was, the very early stuff, where the term given to calling a method is a message.
Mm-hmm.
We message this thing to this thing. It's like what? So yeah, you can't just read this.
Here's the easy thing. If you have a degree in computer science, get that one. If you don't, get this one.
So anyway, so regarding the whole design pattern, I actually brought. Let me see if I can find the.
I can recommend one thing though. So we have a GDE Mangaridas who has written around 30 articles, and each article is dedicated to one design pattern in Dart and Flutter. And also, we made a video actually together.
Yeah. We've got put some links in the chat.
Yeah.
So Flutter, the Flutter Greece meetup we did yesterday. If I can find it, I did one place I can't find. Hang on. Sheets, Google Sheets, that'll do it, right?
And before we get off that subject real quick, I just want to show this one. If you search for Christopher Ahravi, I just butchered his name, on YouTube, you will find some incredible information on design patterns. And this guy is actually fun to watch. He really is. And I will put the link in the chat. And actually, but he is an absolute blast to watch. Very entertaining. He was working on a master's, I believe, in computer science, master's or PhD. And this was part of what he was doing.
So I found what I was looking for, the slide from yesterday. I want to bring it up on the stream because this is the design pattern that I don't know if I came up with it or it's what I basically worked towards in all my projects over the years. There you go. Sorry, is that a bit small for everyone? I don't know. It's the best you're going to get, I think. Can I make it higher resolution? That might be better. Anyway, I mean, you can read the bullet points, but the general premise is it's a very similar design pattern to DDD, right? In the terms of you only communicate with the layer that you're in or the layer above you and below you. So you don't jump from a widget never communicates with the service layer, right? It has to go through the layers in between. And this means that you get this sort of by design, by using this pattern, you get that the separation of concerns, right? and you get that kind of that sort of nice sort of caked architecture where you can work on one thing in isolation to other things, right? So yeah, in this case, whatever we'll go. I'll just briefly cover this because maybe it's interesting. I don't know. The service layer being, I say mutable, right? But the idea being that it might have state in terms of a HTTP client, for example, right? But it's not. It doesn't hold on to any global state throughout the application. They're just there to access external services to the app. So your API, any other APIs that you might be accessing, or even plugins, preferably. So like the location plugin might have a location service, right? And that communicates with the location plugin to provide that. And then on the layer below, we've got, in this case, like auth manager. So in that case, that is stateful. So that's going to have like a stream for the currently logged in user, their user object in your application, and then it'll have methods for like log in, log out, that kind of stuff to manage that part of the application, right? This allows you to test that in isolation to the rest, manage it, work on it. And then if that needed to use the API service, then the auth manager would use the API service, right? And then the product repository and order repository, for example, in the repository layer here, they're pretty much the same thing as a manager, except for the idea being they're called a repository because they hold on to objects. So the idea here is throughout this application, this is an e-commerce application, the user browses the search, and you might have the same product come up in multiple categories, right? So instead of re-downloading that product, we have an in-memory cache in the product repository. So it ends up being like a global singleton cache for the entire application. And that can be like least recently used LRU and have like the last sort of 100 products in there. And that way you go between screens and look at the details for a product without having to download and sort of do stuff. And you could then expand that for a caching layer and have disk cache for product information, perhaps. And I mean, caching is another thing altogether because you have a HTTP cache for the API, who knows what, right? Like that's an entirely different topic. But yeah, and then on that's sort of the back end of the app, and all these are nicely testable. So the relationship between the layers, you can test like the auth manager and the API service interaction, as well as the API and auth service independently of each other, or vice versa. And then on the front end, you've got as I said here, I kind of always break the front into these two sort of layers. You got the widget layer, and then you got your state layer, right? And state layer just being not necessarily the state objects for UI, that's still the widgets, but any state management solution you have that separates the business logic out. So as I said here, like blocks, or it could be Riverpod, it can be MobX, whatever you want, right? Like name your pattern, but that's just the layer. So whatever you're using for your state management, that would then use the repository layer to communicate it further into the app. So you can imagine that means multiple screens have their own blocks. They can all use the product repository. Does that kind of make sense? Any thoughts, questions? Interested? Not interested? I don't know.
Who can dare to say not interested? Just tell me, right?
I just want to make sure I was understood.
No,
like,
I'm just
I run through this stuff really quickly, and I mean, is there any thoughts? I mean, have you guys worked on similar projects and had similar sort of patterns?
Yeah, so I actually did. I think I even presented similar things 2-3 years ago in Flutter Europe. But in many of my applications, at least that I worked recently in the last 2 years, we have fairly similar pattern or architecture, let's say. We usually, like you said, we try to have a layer of a state layer or application layer, someone says, and separate your logic from widgets, and then an underlying layer, which is repositories or those services, or some people say data providers, just technically different names but similar things. So yeah, I think it's working great. Well, as far as I see. But also, I think I want to ask one question here: is that creating these layers, Simon? You know that it also creates complexity to the app, and I think you need to Well, I sometimes say sometimes people think that they have to have these layer in each application that they create. What do you think about that?
I'm going to say no, they don't, right? I mean, it depends on how complicated. If you're doing a to-do app, you don't expect it to have all this structure. However, saying that, for most apps, there's a certain level of complexity now. You expect to have account management, right? You expect to have login, log out. You expect to have some way of accessing data from your backend system. So it ends up being there's a minimal set. And honestly, keeping these layers, I found the best way to organize and make sure that the data flows in a consistent manner throughout the application. So, I mean, for example, in this case here, the product repository can listen to the auth manager's logged in state feed stream. And when the user logs out, it can clear the cache of products.
Yep.
If that was, well, maybe orders, right? The order repository, because they're specific to the user. And that's all can be managed in the backend and can be tested, right? And that's all independent of UI. So things that feel like people treat UI as data, right? Like as UI is just your representation of data, right? It's and that's even more critical in a Flutter app where the declarative UI state is you're representing your state. Your UI represents your state, should I say, your data model. So I don't know. I can talk about stuff for weeks.
Okay.
Sure.
One other quick point to touch on that's on a question. Basically, look up state management.
There's a package called Injector, actually.
Yes.
And that's specifically designed to work with Thomas Burkhart's Get It.
Get it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've used it in a package before. I think it's called Injector.
While you're looking that up, a little clarification here. And then, are you talking about ways to call multiple futures simultaneously? Because that you could use maybe future.wait if you're waiting for all your API calls to finish before proceeding. But I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I think that's what he's asking for. Future.wait is the thing.
Yeah.
And then this is the package Injector, and it's a.
There's actually an article about that when I was just looking at it.
It's a code generator. It hasn't been updated since March, but does not say it's not current. And this allows you to, I think there's the one. Do you know what? I'm not sure if this is the one. Hang on. Registered dependency.
Yeah. If people are using RiverPart, by the way, so RiverPart also doing the same thing. I mean, dependency injection is also part of the RiverPart as well. So you may not need to have another package. You're using RiverPart already, for example.
Before we go on to state management, what the hell were we talking about?
We've already done state management.
No. Before we start, didn't you have another question for me? I can't remember what it was.
Well, we were talking about Chris's Go router.
Should we go through the README and see what it is?
Yes, we were looking at that. And by the way, regarding state management, just a reminder.
You're right.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm not sure what's going on here. Nobody's telling me anything. They're all just kind of like, I'm the one who's supposed to have control here. I don't know.
We are shuffling. We are just shuffling.
Simon probably remembered another meeting that he was late for.
Yeah.
It happens every 10 minutes.
Sure.
Anyway, let's see here. Aha, he's back.
Yeah, he's back.
What? I'm back. Sorry about that. Right, where were we?
Yeah, it's this little nobody guy, Chris Sells.
Who's that?
Wrote this.
Right. Is this big enough for everyone to see?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I can see it on my monitors.
Well, I'm thinking about like the people with low resolutions. So, router delegate.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to step away for a moment. I'll be back.
I'll be back. says the Schwarzenegger. Follow these instructions, eh? Oh, that's just the stand. That's sorry. That just takes you to the install tab here. So just how to add it to your project. So have a look, declarative routing. So you create your router, add your routes, and you've declared them. Yay. Have you guys used Navigator 2 yet?
Navigator 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used it. I think it's my preferred Navigator for sure.
I've definitely used. So I've done. So for myself personally, I did a lot with the pages. There's two APIs as part of Navigator 2, which is the router API and the pages API. The pages API is the mechanism that you can provide a set of pages to a standard Navigator widget. I think, to be honest, I think the confusion around Navigator 2 was the fact that they extended the normal Navigator widget rather than like saying Navigator 1 is over here and we'll make a new Navigator 2 widget, you know, and you can use that one in place. What they've done is they've extended the normal Navigator widget with pages, right, which has slightly probably confused the people that are trying to implement the normal Navigator widget.
You're right.
But yeah, so this is cool. Also, he's got like a sub location, so you can essentially do a prefix solution. Oh, and he's got parameter extracting parameters. Nice. I see. Sorry. So okay. Error handling. We've got an error page builder. So like route not found or error passing route information or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this is the new name constructor for using a router. And I've demoed this before in my previous talk, and I did a couple of custom routers.
Yeah, sure.
So this is basically what you do is you create a Go router, and then you pass its router information parser and router delegate over to the material app router, which I actually like this because it means that you could extend this. You could do a lot of other things with this. This opens up. This is the composition pattern, really.
Yep. I mean, some people, Simon, sometimes ask like, why should they even use Navigator 2? This is a complex for some people. It's very complex, you know. And I think, yeah. Go ahead.
Go for it.
I just want to say, like, apart from like Navigator 2 has a lot more flexibility, there's also one thing that's much better in Navigator 2 if you are considering Flutter for other platforms, especially like web, for example. So the Navigator 1 is not really scalable, extendable in Flutter web, but in Navigator 2 you have much more flexibility in web, especially. I think these are there are a lot of other things of course, you name it, Simon, maybe. But I mean, this is one of the questions that I really get a lot from other people. Like, why?
I tell you a good example. I think it's actually in the README because I think I remember this. But one of the examples that I talk about when talking about Navigator 2 was the fact that you might push 3 screens, and then you want to remove one of those screens from the stack. There's no way of doing that with the imperative way that we do it right now with Navigator 1, right? You're pushing on top, you're pushing on top, you're pushing on top.
Exactly.
And you can pop down to a place and then push something on top in one session. But what you can't do is just like remove something from the middle of the stack. You just don't have that control.
Yep.
And there's all basically the screens you have open represent your state. That's the key concept. It means that the two things are in sync. by understanding the state of your application, you understand what the user is seeing. It's really powerful. I can't understate that enough. If you get an error report or you get some log tracking or anything else that tells you what the situation that the user's in, you see that here, and it's definitely what they're going to be seeing, right? You could represent that. So yeah.
Exactly.
Let's have a.
But luckily for those who found actually Navigator 2 more complex to implement and work with, then there are lots of packages, and one of those is this one that we are actually reviewing right now, Go Router. So there are good ones already, Router Master or a couple of.
Yeah, there's a couple of. Is it Auto Router or something? Auto Route. Something
Yeah,
like that.
Auto Router. I think. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there are a couple of good ones. This is also a very good one from Chris Sells for sure. I mean, we had already a couple of them. So
this is interesting. Yeah. It's gone for a string mapping. So there's a serialization happening here, which you need to think about. Push name, refresh the route. Interesting. That's interesting. I do like this as well, being able to set the URL path strategy straight from here.
Exactly.
So this allows us to get rid of the old hash thing on and use the path strategy on on web. Let's go back to here. So yeah, let's look at these use cases. Cody, I'm scrolling through. So we've got error handling, initialization, simple enough example. Then you've got when you want to navigate, you just do go router of context, which goes up the tree to find it. I'm assuming that this would, I mean, by the standard nature of this. Oh, that's interesting, actually. No, we'll go router of because you're not putting the widget in the tree, are you? So it must be fetching for the standard. So routers themselves nest inside, and you can fetch them to the standard router.of, which allows you to fetch the router above you so the same way that you have widget hierarchy, there's a router hierarchy. So you can have sub routers in the way that Navigator 2 works, and they can you can have a router per section of your app, for example.
Yep.
So it can get really complicated, what I was trying to say, but it's very powerful at the same time. And I think that's the other thing that people had a problem with, seeing the complexity because it's powerful, but then not seeing that you don't have to use all this complexity to do what you want to do. It just gives you all the options.
Exactly.
So this is nice because this is kind of hidden that complexity behind a standardized front end here. So you got go router of go. So it's an extension method. That's nice. So context.go this. I wonder if there's I didn't check actually. Did that go method yes, you have go and go named, and you can pass parameters to it. So the location you can actually pass the parameters in like a query string format. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Via the link widget. Oh yeah, that's what they brought in with web, didn't they? They brought they finally brought, was it this one? Yeah, Euro Launcher, yeah. And that's what it was. Yeah, I brought in a link widget. I remember that. Okay. Cool. Current location. So if you want to know your current location, you can just go router.location property. It's simple enough. That's interesting. So he's got an animated builder listening to the router. So the router itself is a change notifier. So whenever the route changes, anything in your app can listen to that and change. That's really powerful, that is.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. It says it here. Change notifier. Yeah. Initial location. So that's what your opening screen is. I'm interested in if your app is started using a deep link, then initial location is ignored, which is standard behavior, which is good. Path to regex package. Do you know what? I never knew that existed. This is interesting.
Yeah, it's the first time I'm also seeing this. Who made it? From Flutter team?
No, I don't think so. Leon? Oh, thank you, Leon, for this lovely package.
Yeah.
This is that I mentioned I might use this in a few things now. I know it exists. So this is the lovely thing about this, right? I'm looking at this going, actually, this is one of those common things when you want to like match URL, and you don't have to provide regexes all over the place. This is a common thing. I like that. I like that a lot. Right, and then what else we got? So parameters, yeah. So we can support. So we can. So in the page builder, you actually get the state back out for the route, and then you can fetch out the parameters from that and pass them into your site. This is really powerful actually as well, because this means you're getting that transition, aren't you, from parameters passed into the widgets that you're actually you're using it in. Exactly. I wonder if one of those interesting things that I do in some apps, or have done, is when you want something to be, you want to launch a screen, but you want it to be synchronous yet asynchronous. So what I mean by this is there might be a time that you want to launch a screen with an object. So let's say, I'll give my e-commerce app solution as an example. You want to launch the product details. So you have a product object that already has all the information. So you want to start the screen up with this product object, and it just displays the information, right? However, there might be times like you get a deep link and you only get the ID of the product. So you need to fetch that product and then display the page. However, you want to show the progress of the fetch, right? So what you really want to do is launch the product screen, have a loading spinner whilst it does the background, future, or whatever else to fetch that product information, and then display it to the user. So I do wonder if that's something that, I don't know if Chris has been thinking about this, but if that's something that you can get into the router package. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like there's like that's a very common pattern to have. Maybe there's a package out there. Maybe someone to make a package. I don't know.
There is, I think, similar, like let's say, pattern in some framework in web. Actually, I've seen that you have an interceptor for these router parameters. You actually load the packet, the page with the parameter, and then but there is already, before you get to that page, there is an interceptor which gets that parameter. We try to resolve the whole product for you, and then pass it down to the packet.
But we could actually do that here, right? So in this case, let's say this family function here returns a future.
Yeah.
Right. Then you, as long as you've got a constructor for your widget that supports passing in a future or the object that returns that future, once it gets to the page has got the future, and it can load the state of the future as the progress, right? So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's not a bad, like, simple thing that you could do and say, oh, when it's launched with an ID, use a future. If I'm launched with an object, use an object. But here's the thing, right? With this whole router thing, what we've got here, and that's what I said just a minute ago, what it's doing is using string to string for parameters. There's no way of launching a route with an object, right? You have to serialize that object. So this was always a problem, well, not a problem, but common pattern on Android, where an activity has to be launched with serialized parameters. What do they call it? It used to be called Icicle. Oh my god, brain. A bundle. It meant that if you wanted to launch a screen, what you would do, and you had the object, you would put the object into a global singleton sort of hash map kind of deal, where you kind of got a cache of objects, and then you pass the ID of that, so where to look out from the hash map to the next screen, and the next screen go fetch it from that hash map, that global hash map. Essentially, there's more complicated ways, but that's the kind of base of it. So basically, you've got a singleton cache that you can use one string ID to fetch things from, but it just overcomplicates things when you just like, I just want to pass the object to the next screen. Why? This is one of the nice things about I found with Flutter is that I can just do, push to the next screen and here give it the object and it's done. There's no like all this other boilerplate to do that. So yeah, that's an interesting thought. There might be something there.
A couple things. Don't fall so far down this rabbit hole that you forget about any other questions or about Flutter Vikings.
Yeah.
And also, I'm going to have to be going here in a moment, but what do you think we can talk Chris into coming on next week to go over this?
Maybe. Let's see how things go. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to step out. You all have a good one. Simon, close up shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same. I have to wrap off in 2 minutes.
All right. Let's we don't have to talk about this now. There's I mean, I'm not joking. Look at this. I'm a quarter of the way through. So
Yes.
so I'm just like curious about it, right? Like there's
Actually
so much
interesting.
here,
Yes,
like
it's
pushing pages,
as you said, it's very well
Re-
documented. So I've
redirection,
looked at that already. It's very well documented.
lots of good examples. Login page app.
I think we wanted to see such a things from Chris, right? He's the product owner of the Flutter, and he knows many of these use cases. Perhaps
What I really like about this, I agree with you. There's that, but also what I really like is when someone that's working on a framework. This doesn't happen all that often across the industry. Someone's working on a framework, they get hands-on with their own framework. There's the dog fooding, if you will, right? Because in doing so, they go, "Why is this so difficult?" And they go, "Okay, we'll fix that." That's what you really want from a framework. You want people to be actually using the framework and identifying those first developer experience problems.
I totally agree.
Right. Yeah. I might go through this in some spare time.
I think we should dedicate one show even for this because it's quite.
We can even try some of these out, right? Some common scenarios that might be good.
Exactly.
Maybe even try explain a little bit about what Navigator 2 is doing and why it different. Maybe have a Navigator 1, Navigator 2 example, and then show the Go router in place of that and see how it goes. But this is nice transitions builder, custom transition page. If someone made an app that did this, I would be unhappy. It's a great example, though, right? Showing you how you did this transition.
Oh, here you go. Async data.
Ooh.
And this is what you were talking probably.
Let's have a look. Here we go. If you need to wait for the data before showing the content, Flutter provides a way to do this. A future builder widget that works the same way the Go router has always does in Flutter. For example, imagine you've got a repository class that does network communication, looks up the data. Yes, get families or get family by ID. Oh, look, I think that was the function I was literally just talking about. Now you can use a future builder to show loading indicator. Okay, so he's just put it all in the router here, but so you've got a no transition page as a future builder that gets the families for a future in the route. So this is, by the way, just to explain to people, this is like the widget for the page, right? Like he's just inlined it for an example. But in truthfulness, you wouldn't want to lay out your entire app all in one widget like this, right? You'd break out, you break this out as its own widget called like home screen, right? And then here we go. So then we get the ID. Yeah, and this is why I said, like, so it's just passing the ID across, and then that would get the future. But I kind of like the idea of maybe calling this function in this function here inside the page builder, and then passing the future to the family object. In
That's
this case,
what I was thinking.
Into
actually,
the widget. Yeah.
It would be much nicer, easier actually.
It definitely feel like it's clean, and then you would have a common pattern that you could then essentially always passing an object into your screens and never passing ID or a feature to that object, which makes sense. It also means if you load your object from a cache or somewhere else, even if you have a synchronous feature, you can push that in as well. So there's some really nice patterns you can do with that. Exactly. Nested navigation. Oh goodness, we're not going to go there right now, but it supports that. Deep linking. This is what I was also looking at, like it does that, and then also the URL path strategy as we mentioned earlier. So you can just set that before you call your app, and you get rid of it. Cool. Debugging your routes. That's nice. I mean, like just the fact that it's got all of this, right? Like, and then examples. Bam, 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 bam. Go for it.
Fantastic.
And let's have a look. Oh no, there's one issue.
One issue already.
Oh, and Chris made it.
Oh, but
doesn't count. All right. Anyway, okay. So, is there anything you want to chat about before? We'll go for some. I'll go for some questions.
Let's see if you have any question. Actually,
where did we get to before? Should I scroll up a bit and see where we got to? I see some replies from you guys. So, I love the refactor feature in IntelliJ. Is that reference to something earlier? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, we answered this question.
Okay, I want to create an isolate, but confused with receive port and send port. It is a very complicated pattern, and all I can suggest is there's a function called compute. And let me just go quickly grab your link to that. Basically, it is a function that you call, and it will generate you an isolate. It will create and send the objects for you. It will do all of that underlying complicated bit. It's in the foundation library. I'm putting a link in the chat for you. Yeah, so compute is it handles the send port and receive port and does it all for you. You basically give it a callback function, and then the message you want to point for the data is called, they call it message, that you want to give to that function, and then that function is called from the isolate in the background, and then once you return the value from that, it returns it from the compute function as a future. So it handles the whole thing of starting the isolate, handling the error over, and getting it back. So it makes it a lot simpler. I can't really, and then the documentation explains the receive port and send port, and it's just a complicated topic. So practice, try again, you know, if you want to go for it manually. But if you're just trying to get isolates working, use the compute function. Oh, look, thank you very much. We love me. Right. What else do we have? Real Pocket X, Emacs, right? Can we see the Flutter team come up with a sophisticated state management framework or component in the future, like we have different components in Android, Jetpack, UI, Room, etc.? I mean, we do already have that. That's what the framework provides. The framework already provides lots of state management parts to it, right? All the other things are built on top of that. So you can just go ahead and use the built-in framework things like change notifier and value listenable builder and all these kind of things are already built in. Right. How to change the URL when using bottom navigation bars in web. What you want to do is in the Dart SDK, I've done this before, and you set the location reference. So let me just get that for you right now. And window top level property, that's the one. So it's window.location. It's just like JavaScript, window.location.href, I think it is. Yeah. So it's this here. Window.location .href equals this, and you're basically setting the URL. You're changing the URL, and you can. There's another one for history, I think, which actively lets you change it. I forget what it is, but it's all you're doing is you're using the .html package to call what JavaScript would be. So what you actually want to look up here is, how do I change the URL in my JavaScript app? Do that, Google that, and when it tells you where it is in JavaScript, you can do that in Dart, right? Because Dart is has a one-to-one relationship with the JavaScript SDK for web. Yeah, this is it. I found it. It's I think it's this. Push state, that's the one. Replace state, that's the one. I know I'll find it somewhere. I think it's this, if I remember rightly. You call window.history.replace state, and then you can give it a different title and URL, and it just magically updates the URL. It doesn't actually navigate the user away. So it just kind of replaces the current page. And when you hit back, it still takes you back. If you do push state on that same object, the same history object, there's a push state, and that's the same as pushing a page on the stack. But these are very much out of the remit of the way that Flutter Navigator works. That's a separate thing entirely. Honestly, Navigator 2 would solve this as well with the router stuff. So you have to do nested routers in this case of that bottom nav. So each you'd have a router per tab, basically. What else do we have here? Hey, Andrew, welcome. Yes, so we're going to be seeing the compute function faster. If I remember rightly, there was a talk given in March, and you'll find it on the Flutter YouTube channel by Maxim Lin, and he did a brilliant talk about how he's been in his open source time. He's a GDE, but in his as a part of his open source contributions, he's been working on with a team on providing an optimized solution. I think he got like 10,000 isolates started up in like 10 seconds or 1 second or something stupid like that. And it was like, whoa, this is a big change. I think they were called lightweight isolates or something. I can't remember what he was calling them. But
I can find the video actually. I've watched it. It's brilliant.
Brilliant video. Brilliant. So, any other questions? Ask them now. Right. Well, since there's no more questions, I think we'll wrap up. Did you want to say anything about Vikings while we're here?
Vikings. Well, still not a good time. I'm actually working on the venue. I think I mentioned to you at least several times. I had a meeting with the venue. One great venue in the heart of Oslo city. So hopefully I can get that. That's a beautiful venue. It's a very beautiful view and nice food.
We always like nice food.
Yes. I'm working
That's
on
the most
that.
important bit.
Yeah, definitely. I actually to the sales manager in the venue, I said that, they have a couple of, tiers for the food. I immediately, when I saw that, I said, okay, don't worry about the food. That's the toughest one. Always.
Right.
Since the food is the most important one in the conference.
If you can't feature speakers, then, there's a problem.
Sure. So, well, hopefully in person, Oslo, around February. I don't know yet the exact time because I need approval from the venues. One of the venue at least should approve first. But it would be in the middle of winter. But I guarantee Oslo is going to be very beautiful at that time. So white, a lot of snow. It's going to be a great time. I hope.
Like -20 or something there.
Well, it's cold, but we are inside. We have to. We are together. We are a very warm community, isn't it? Like we're gonna.
You've got lots of saunas though, right? And
absolutely
jacuzzis and things like that. Yeah, we'll do that.
Absolutely. So but some people ask me, like, is it only in person or maybe a hybrid version? Definitely a hybrid version. So because we're not gonna. Oh yeah, Steph is asking right now. Yes, it's gonna be both in person and virtual for sure. I mean, that's an absolute must from my perspective, and I think Simon and everyone in the Flutter community agrees on that. So we should broadcast for everyone. But if you can join in person, hopefully there is no restriction at that time. Then it would be nice.
The key behind these events, though, is you need to have people that. You need to obviously have people in person to be able to do it online as well, right? If it's just one or the other, if you want to mix one, you have to have people. You can't just have people turn up online and not turn up in person because you've got nothing to show online, then, right? So you need the right mix. Right, there's a couple of questions here. I'm going to quick answer. If you want to head off, Majid, please head off, and then I'll close the show.
Yes, sure.
Let's have a look here. My list view becomes unstable when scrolling for the moment I place a grid view of images inside it. How to fix this, please? Wrap your grid view in a repaint boundary widget. That's what I'd say first of all. So what repaint boundary does? Repaint boundary. What that does is it adds an extra layer to the UI the way it renders the screen is done in layers, and it adds an extra layer between the two. And what that means is when this layer repaints, it doesn't repaint the layer on the inside. So it just moves the layer on the inside. So that may help. But it could also be that when your list view is scrolling, it's rebuilding what the grid view content is. So I would suggest you also look at Future Builder and Stream Builder. If you've got any of those in use, making sure you're providing initial data. If you're not providing initial data to a future or to a stream builder, you're probably reloading all your content and it's jerking around because it's changing widgets very quickly. Yeah, I don't think I could say much else. The thing is, you don't. The other side to this is don't put. What you don't want to do is put slivers inside slivers, which is what you're doing here. It's put it this way. Let's say I had a list view, as you're saying here, like a list view of content, some text, and I had a panel of images that were taller than the screen. Let's say I had three times the height of image, 3 times the height of the screen in images, right, in a grid view. What means is when I scroll, it's going to have to load in all those images, even the ones off the screen, because it's one piece of sliver content for them outside scroll view. So what you actually want to do is use a custom scroll view is another option. A custom scroll view, you provide a set of slivers, and you can have a sliver list, and you can also have a sliver grid view, I think it is. And this allows you to sort of put a sliver list at the top, sliver grid view, and then another sliver list underneath. And it will ensure that it only loads the bits of content that are available on the screen. And that should also improve performance. But without seeing your code, it's very hard to sort of diagnose these things. I would suggest you use the performance tools and panels inside of the IDE as well. So there's a Flutter performance thing. DevTools has a whole new set of performance checking things. And you can see there's also a button in the Flutter inspector which turns on the overlay, which shows you what frame skipped on. And you can look at in the Flutter, I think it's called Flutter Performance in ID. There's a box that says count my widget rebuilds somewhere, something like that. And you can see what widgets are being rebuilt. And if you show that when you scroll, they're being rebuilt more often when you don't, or when you don't have the outside scroll view, you can see which widget is being rebuilt too much, and that helps you diagnose and find the fault, right? In the way you've done your UI. Sorry, that was a big answer. If I create a file by code and then edit the code in that file, like all the code, use file, but my problem is that I can render that file in my app. Are you trying to make an IDE? Are you trying to edit your dark code from within the app itself? Because that's not going to work. It's not how it works. That is such a vague question, and you need to describe what you're trying to do more. But your code, when you compile it, so your code, when you write it in your app, is source code. When you build your app, it's compiled into machine code. That's all ones and zeros. Once it's compiled, you can't edit it. That's part of your app then. So even when your app is running, it can't edit the dark code, right? So there's no, you can't self-edit, right? Once it's compiled, that's it, right? It's not the same as scripting or HTML. You can have HTML that edits itself, right? Because it's editing the DOM tree, right? It doesn't, there's not a one-to-one relationship there. It doesn't work the same way at all. So yeah, you not possible. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's possible, but not plausible. You could probably find a way of compiling the Dart engine, shipping it inside your app and doing some weird, funky things. But why? For what purpose? It sounds to me like you're probably trying to approach the problem wrong, right? Like your solution is not the actual correct solution for the problem that you have. Right. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. No, there's no link to is a link to event net? No, not yet. We'll post more updates on this channel, and we'll see where we go. And you're welcome, Hamish. Sorry. Right, I think that's it. We'll wrap it up then. So thank you all for coming. And hopefully you got your questions answered. And yeah, well, I guess we'll see you back here next week.
See you.
Ciao.
Ciao.